You are listening to the Obstructed View Red Sox podcast, presented by Beyond the Monster.
I think that the idea, what they had in 2018 was the culmination of several years of creating a scouting and player development juggernaut. They were able to do so in incredible, so there are different waves that have come through and impacted the Red Sox over the course of this will be season number 23 that I'm covering, right? And obviously they won the World Series in 2004, but that wasn't the blue, that was taking advantage of what had been pre-existing and supplementing it very well. It hadn't been kind of the vision that Theo Epstein had entered with of building the so-called scouting and player development machine, right? That happened really fast. I mean, ridiculously fast if you think about it. Starting with the 2002 draft preceded Epstein. They drafted John Lester. So that ended up being a huge anchor. But then between in those first 3 years under Theo, they had massive hits in each of those drafts. You're talking about Papelbon in 03, and you're talking Pedroia in 04 as a second rounder. And, for that matter, you have the Buchholzes and Ellsburys of the world in 05. And so that group came together, it took about 5 years, right? If you think about it from the arc from 2002 to 2007, there was a significant homegrown element that existed in that 2007 World Series. So then move forward, their farm system, they had this incredible young core. They needed to build a next one behind it, which they did, but that was kind of at the end of the Epstein era. And that's the beginning of the book, 2011, when you have that incredible draft, which was the last time that you could spend as much as you wanted on the draft. And that was a very clear-eyed, forward-thinking organization that took great advantage of the idea that you could get a bunch of comp picks in the draft, which is something that is much harder to acquire now than it was back then. And you could just spend an unlimited amount, so that if, for instance, you took a very athletic high school kid in the 5th round, you could give him $700,000 to not sign it at Tennessee. And then all of a sudden, several years later, you have Mookie Betts. But getting back to your question, that was a Ben Cherington overseen build where he was very careful. He was very careful to not give away any of the top level prospects that they had in that period. And so from 2000, that one took a while. 2011 to 2016 was the window where that group really started to go. So 5 years again, where you're looking at formation of a core and professional beginnings of a core, to the realization of what that core could become. Now with this one, it's been a little bit more diffuse, right? You didn't have that one wave that you had in 2011, nor did you have that kind of back-to-back massive impact drafts that you had back in 2002 to 2005 with the Red Sox. It's been a little bit more, it's been somewhat more sprawling, right? You're looking at 18, both, Casas is drafted, Bayo is signing as an amateur. So, you're looking at kind of maybe that is the beginning of it, but then you're slowly adding pieces along the way. And so that 5-year timetable obviously hasn't been realized, right? It's not like Tristan Casas marks the point of origin of this core and 2023 going full blast. You were seeing signs of it, but you weren't seeing it going full blast. And I think that if you're identifying the locus of this one, you're probably thinking you're probably hoping, if you're the Red Sox, 21 or 22 is the point of origin for it with the Marcelo Meyer draft, as well as, and I think that was when they signed Miguel Blaze. So, theoretically you'd want to factor him into the mix. As well as, and then 22, you have Roman Anthony. So realistically, if a best case scenario is getting 5 years out from that, you're talking about that's maybe a realistic window for thinking about a core that's able to power championship contention, because I think 24 is unrealistic. 25, you're talking about a bunch of guys, even if there's a best case scenario, transitioning to the big leagues. But again, stepping back, in answer to your question, yes, we are seeing a patient build with the Red Sox. We're seeing a patient build that is taking longer than what the Red Sox envisioned, because I think that when they hired Chaim Bloom, that they envisioned, maybe that 5-year window was going to be opening right about then, and it's taking a little bit longer than that. So I think that you're seeing I think you're seeing a more methodical approach than you've ever seen the Red Sox take, because under past administrations, you had seen, while waiting for that core to form or waiting for that core to be brought into the system, you saw bridge years, right? Like you saw aggressive efforts to really bolster what the major league roster looked like, in order to avoid putting too much on players who might not be ready for their big league opportunities. And so hence you had, the original bridge year was Adrian Beltre, John Lackey, and Mike Cameron. Like, it was a very high-end, ambitious view of what the major league roster could do in the short term. The most successful bridge year being 2013, when it was, signing guys left and right rather than rushing guys to the big leagues. And in this case, like, this is the closest that we've seen. I wrote about this in the Globe. Like, this is not the bridge year. This is the sink or swim year, where rather than building out the rotation this offseason, you're seeing more of an approach of, you know what, for the Red Sox really do want to see what their young pitchers can look like if given a fuller opportunity to develop with a kind of shifting pitching infrastructure. So yeah, patient. This is the potentially lean time of patience.